how Prince William and Catherine are preparing Prince George for the throne.
And we dissect new reports that claim Meghan Markle is busy trying to save her Netflix gig. Hello and welcome to Heirs and Spares, the show that dives into the fascinating world of two of the most recognized royal couples on both sides of the Atlantic. I'm Kinsey Schofield, and I'll be bringing you updates on Prince Harry and Meghan Markle right here in sunny California.
And I'm Rupert Bell. Sorry I wasn't with you last week, but I had other matters on hand. But I'm delighted to be back to bring you all the latest news and what's going on in the UK with the Prince and Princess of Wales.
All right, so there was an article in the Times, Rupert, that of course, sparked a lot of controversy. It was supposed to be this gorgeous profile on Princess Anne at 75 and how she doesn't plan to retire. She wants to stay similar to her father and that incredible work ethic and keep working until she's 90, which is clearly something we should celebrate. However, what's been picked apart in this piece is that, according to people close to Princess Anne, who we know as the hardest working royal, Prince William's lack of, busy diary is something that allegedly annoys her. Did you read this article, and do you have a reaction to that? Like they say that she wants Prince William to do more of the bread and butter royal engagements, and I think to myself, this is such a no nonsense woman. Why do I not trust someone talking on her behalf? Does that make sense?
I know exactly what you're saying. Look, she doesn't suffer fools gladly. She is, as we know, the hardest working royal, and obviously we've spoken about her when I like to mention every time when I was able to give her that award. Again, I've mentioned it. Sorry, Kinsey. However, what I will say is, there is this nickname that does get bandied around about Prince William, as his nickname is Work Shy Willie. Now, I don't know whether I agree with that or disagree with that, but what I think she's implying is, we are short-staffed. So, William, if everything in the, once now the sort of worst is over with your wife, it's probably time to say, right, we got to knuckle down here because we're short of members, and I need all the help I can get. And bearing in mind, last year, remember, she was kicked pretty horrendously, or we don't know the exact circumstances, but ended up in hospital for 5 days. She still has a pretty intense workload. There are lots of investitures. I think she's implying that why do I do all these investitures? So I think she's saying, she's probably, whether she likes it being sort of quoted by friends, I'm not necessarily so sure, but what I think it's implying is that William, right, you need now, your children are getting older, you've got to, get the work-life balance now needs to be managed better, I think is the gentle implication from the Princess Royal. And I understand where she's coming from. Look, it's a tough gig because obviously he still wants to be there for his children. He wants to obviously be there to support his wife, and bearing in mind his dad is also recovering from his own condition. I just think it may be just a sort of gentle wake-up call for William to say, right, I understand what's going on, but we need, I'm in my 70s, the King's in his 70s, Queen Camilla's not work shy, and she gets on with it. Given, Prince Edward has a pretty good rap about getting on with it in an unflustered way with his wife, the Duchess of Edinburgh. But of course, that second generation, William's generation, it's a bit you look at it. Where are the working royals?
And well, that is I wonder if we should acknowledge that he's restructuring the way he imagines working royals should, with these big initiatives like Earthshot or creating these homeless shelters and putting together these boards of change makers and influential people that when they work together, they're stronger. I just feel like, it is suspicious to me that in the last 2 weeks, we've had some really negative stories come out about the working royals who we should all admire. The king being this diva of a gardener, Princess Anne having any sort of issue whatsoever with Prince William, who I just think I think that would be something that she would be frustrated with somebody telling a newspaper. If that's true, at what point are we going to acknowledge that William has different expectations, and he's trying to do things his way, and it's for the health of his wife, it's for the growth of his children, and maybe it's the correct path forward.
Well, one of the things the royal family always say, we need to be seen, right? Because it's actually, we need to be out there in front of the British public. And that is a very good mantra because it helps cement their role in life. Now, he's absolutely correct in trying to focus on a series of serious initiatives, but at the same time, he can't be closeted up in Windsor, just concentrating on those every so often. And I have to say he does, but he's got to be aware that the public still want to see him. And that is part of the role of the monarch, and that's what has frustrated the current king, is that he's not been able to get out and engage with the British public. So it is a balancing act, and this is going to be, it's like, well, we talked about it when the Queen died. How was the king going to then move the monarchy on? Look, I think he's in a sort of holding. The king currently views I'm in a bit of a holding pattern because I'm in my 70s and I'm not going to be on the throne as long as my mother, and goodness knows how long I will be on the throne, because I'm in a way for William then to have a long run at it. So it's a preparation for that. It's sort of being a steady hand on the tiller. Meanwhile, William has to get ready for the way he sees the monarchy working. But the one thing the British public will expect of the monarchy is to be out and about and to be seen. And that may not always correspond to how he wants to function. But unfortunately, as the Queen said, they need to see me, and various people have always said, is very important. Even if you go back to the Second World War, when the Queen Mother and the King of the time didn't leave Buckingham Palace because they said, right, we need to. I mean, I know it's a slightly extreme example.
Oh, but it's a great example of the heart of the family.
But that is what the family is about, is to be there with the British public and the British people. And so they said, right, they could have sugared off to some palace and, gone up to Balmoral and just run from there. But in a way, they said, no, we'll be in Buckingham Palace and we'll be there on the, bombs did land on Buckingham Palace. But that is, okay, that's going back in time, but that is the important role of the monarchy, is to be seen and to be out there. Now, the king he's always been out there. So, but I've got a degree of sympathy for William in that, he is obviously, as any husband would want to be, he's sort of had to take on the primary carer role while also, being around for his three children through a difficult time. So it is a balancing act, but maybe just a gentle nudge in the direction of William from Princess Anne.
If you believe it, I don't believe it.
Yeah. Well, I think I believe it in the sense of maybe I think it is the problem for the royal family. It is their problem now since Harry's gone. That generation, because Beatrice and Eugenie, they are not necessarily working royals. What have we got in that 40-something generation? The king's generation, Anne's children, don't do it. Edward's children are still young, but maybe have a different course. So you see the problem for the royal family. The 60s and 70s are out there doing their thing, but where's the next gen? And that is the problem. That is something that needs to be looked at. And William has got to, I'm sure, is very mindful of that, and something that he will be exercising the royal family, I am sure, as to how they go forward in the modern world.
Well, it doesn't help Prince William that he does a lot of things that aren't in the court papers, in the court circular.
Yeah.
We find out that he goes and visits farmers on the duchy property.
Yeah.
Well, if we're finding out about this 2 months after the fact, it's hard to applaud you for putting
Mm.
yourself out there.
Yeah, well, I
And
know this is the yeah, but Kinsey, this is the balancing act that you're quite right. I know that he's got his heart in the right place, but it's the expectation. One thing is another, and this is going to be his great challenge. I think he's got the wherewithal to pull it off because at the heart of what he does, I think he's pretty good. And
yeah,
I think he's got his heart absolutely in the right place to pull it off. But it's a wider issue for the royal family. It's not me having, thinking about William's got to do something. It's actually a wider issue for the royal family of how they deal with the next gen. And what the question is, what support has William got? And that's the question of his generation. And at the moment, it's a bit thin on the ground.
I also think because you said you sympathize with him, and sorry, I know we'll
Yeah,
move on here in a second, but
yeah.
it reminds me of that statement Catherine made about how, okay, you're done with remission, and they tell you that you can go home, and then you feel like so lost because
Mm.
your body's not functioning the way that it could
Oh,
previously, and you don't have that support that you did have. I imagine that that's when Prince William again has to step up and step in, and at the very least be a cheerleader. So he does have a lot on his plate,
oh,
and I can't say this in comparison to the Princess Royal, who we understand was kicked in the head
yeah.
and was at an engagement like 24 to 48 hours later, despite being in the hospital over. And
Well,
it's a tough
well,
cookie.
I think she was in hospital for 5 days. But what
Oh,
I
was
would do, in fact, she was in hospital for 5 days. But the thing is, she didn't hang. Once she was out, she was back. We know she's cut with a very different cloth. But I know, and I am extremely sympathetic to William and his issues because this is the debate of how the royal family go forward. Been left to some extent high and dry by the Duke and Duchess of Montecito.
she?
So as a result, that is the big problem for the royal family as to how they ensure that there is enough to be able to fulfill the obligations of what makes the royal family it is. People value what the Princess Royal does. They value what the Duke and Duchess of Edinburgh do and the Queen Camilla when she's out and about. But unfortunately for William, he's a sort of lone he's a lone voice in this circumstances. So I have a huge degree of sympathy for him in how it goes forward because as I say, he's been left high and dry by his errant brother.
What if you could delay your next two mortgage payments? That's right. Imagine putting those two payments in your pocket and finally getting a little breathing room. It's possible when you call American Financing today. If you're feeling stretched by everyday expenses, groceries, gas, bills piling up, you're not alone. Most Americans are putting these expenses on credit cards, and there doesn't seem to be a way out. American Financing can show you how to use your home's equity to pay off that debt. You need to call American Financing today before you get to a point where you can't make those payments. Their salary-based mortgage consultants are helping homeowners just like you restructure their loans and consolidate debt, all without upfront fees. And their customers are saving an average of $800 a month. That's like a $10,000 raise. It's fast, it's simple, and it could save your budget this summer. Call before it's too late. 866-887-1201. That's 866-887-1201, or visit americanfinancing.net/unfiltered. Well, the eldest is 12. So you're right. When it comes
Yeah.
to Prince George, we have quite a while before we can expect to see the Wales children stepping up and appearing at events alone or having their own causes that they pursue with a vengeance. Let's talk a little bit about how the Wales family are preparing Prince George, because every time I'm at Windsor, there are the sweet stories of Prince William walking up every single weekend from Eton to sit and have private time with Queen Elizabeth, where she, kind of peppered him with history about the British royal family and expectations. And they say basically it was his king training, how to be a king. It's my understanding that William and Catherine aren't necessarily going through the same cycle when it comes to Prince George, that they want him to be a little boy for as long as possible. And yes, we see them bring him along for sporting events, for that beautiful veterans event recently, but they don't want that stress on his shoulders, which sometimes I feel like I see in him. Sometimes I feel like I know that he knows what's to come.
Well, it's not like you or I, we can, when we're 12, you can probably say, right, what am I going to do? I've got a choice. You could at 12. I don't know what you were thinking. Put yourself in your shoes. When you were 12, you were probably thinking, well, what do I like? I don't know when you first got hooked, became a,
I liked NSYNC, and I wore hideous cargo pants with Christian band t-shirts and Brooks Brothers glasses that were a hideous shape for my face. That was me at 12, Rupert.
right. But career-wise, what were you thinking?
I wanted to
I mean,
marry a member of NSYNC and never have to work in my life because they were getting all of my money at the time.
okay,
It
well,
was an
fine.
investment
Well,
in myself.
you've lost me because I have no idea what you're talking about. But then that's just me, okay? What was I thinking at 12? Well, I once thought I wanted to be a professional sportsman. The only trouble is I was completely useless at sport. So that was never going to happen. But he unfortunately sort of it's predetermined. Okay, lots of people then go and do what their fathers do and family mothers do or whatever, the career, you follow on, see all the actors who suddenly got children who are actors and all that sort of thing. But actually, in his case, it's absolutely cast in stone what he's going to end up doing. So he probably has to feel he has to go and join the military, and then, which might be because obviously later in time he'll be colonel in chief of the British forces. It's predetermined. So I see why they want to try and give his time in his prep school time at Lamborough, because as much as normal, before once you become teenage years, it might be then you're doing history. You might have to start just to understand the stately obligations. But I'm sure they want to make sure that he looks back at his childhood with fun. Whereas, William and Harry, at times it was a bitterly unhappy childhood because
Mm.
of what was going on between their mother and father, and then obviously the ultimate sadness of Princess Diana dying so young. So they didn't have it easy in that respect. So I think that's why, in a settled family environment, they want to make sure that they feel that love. And yes, we see George going off to Wimbledon. We see Charlotte at Wimbledon. She was at the Euro finals the other day with Dad, looking as if she was having a lovely time, going through all the emotions of watching a football match. So, as much as is normal, they do try and give them a family life. And I'm sure right now, like so many people in Britain and indeed in America, they're on their summer holidays, get the bucket and spade out and have a bit of fun on the Norfolk coastline. And then they may be nipping up to Balmoral to see grand, go and see the King and Queen. So they're going to have a fun-packed August. Good on them. I hope that they do have a memorable summer holidays, because I remember my summer holidays with great affection, digging for mussels on the west coast of Scotland with loving every minute of it, and freezing in cold water. But I never went swimming. But you know what I mean. So loving my summer holidays, they're precious times, and I hope they, as a family, get their priority right and say, right, these are memories, because unfortunately, a lot of our time is, we've got our life is about service, not about what we want to do. It's about actually having a greater responsibility. For George, it must be thinking, oh my God, well, I've got no choice in the matter. He can't, Edward VII did a runner, but it's not normal.
I have a question. Do you feel like there was more pressure on Prince William around his teenage years about becoming king because of that horrible Panorama interview where Diana suggests that they skip Prince Charles and go straight to Prince William? Because for years, that was a openly debated discussion whether or not they could even do that, skip Prince Charles and go
Well,
straight to Prince William. And there were headlines that were circulating. You
Oh,
imagine that other people brought it up to Prince William, and that's just simply not going to be the case when it comes to Prince George. We expect a King William inevitably, and there's no pressure on Prince George that he could have to take the throne sooner when there was that pressure at some point. I'm sure he was annoyed by the reports and mad at his mother for even suggesting that
yeah.
around Prince William.
But it can't happen. I mean, it was bad enough when we had the abdication. These things don't. That's not the way we rule here. It's basically you get the gig and then you have to. Then you die, right? I mean, I know that's a rather crass way of putting it, but unfortunately, it's a succession monarchy, and that's the way it works here. That would have required a constitutional minefield to go through. It just would never have happened. But it was a sad indictment of where the royal family were in the 90s at times. There were, the Diana and the breakup of the marriage was uncomfortable reading for a lot of people because Diana clearly was hugely popular. And obviously, the British public felt that she'd been mistreated in the grand scheme of things. And there are still people who think like that and, fully entitled to their opinion about the breakup and what went on there. But, for William, they had to grow up pretty fast. Both of them did. And William, that's why they, are involved in all these mental health charities because they needed, some TLC around the time. And for William, I think that is what he's very mindful about. Nothing like that will repeat itself again. The sort of spotlight and the pressure that both he and Harry were under. And so he wants to give George, Charlotte, and Louis as much protection as possible before they become young men and women and ready to go. And I'm completely sympathetic with that approach. And a strong family unit will be worth a thousand going forward. If they're a tight unit, then William's right in that respect. That is absolutely his priority.
All right, let's move on to the troublemakers, shall we?
Oh, here we go. Here we go.
The
Right. Do I
major
need to do it? Do I need to fill my glass up because I'm going to have steam coming out of my ear in about 5 minutes, as the viewers seem to always be commentating on that. I
Definitely.
suddenly I turn into I get a hot flush with frustration or something. So would that be appropriate?
I mean, if you need it, feel
Yeah,
free.
well, it depends where you're going to go with it. So let's. I'm filling up as we go on. It right here we
All
go.
right, well, let's talk about the major peace offering Prince Harry has made to the royal family. According to the Daily Mail, Prince Harry has offered to share his official diary engagements with the royal family in a bid to further reduce tensions between him and King Charles. It's aimed at avoiding a repetition of the date clash that resulted in his trip to the African country of Angola, knocking coverage of Queen Camilla's 78th birthday portrait off the front pages earlier this month. And I have to admit, I had to cover that Angola trip. I don't think I commented one time on Queen Camilla's portrait. And it didn't even occur to me. But this is a conversation we have all the time. Harry and
Mm.
Meghan seeming to strategically create a headline that hijacks something important away from the British royal family, a story away from the British royal family. It also says it hopes the move could lead to the king and his youngest son finally being able to fix a date in their busy schedules to meet face to face. I've been told that could happen the next time Prince Harry is traveling for Well Child. Perhaps he would make an additional stop at Balmoral to see his father potentially. It is understood that while the new regime will stop short of Harry giving his brother the power to control his diary, the Duke is, for the first time since hostilities began in 2020, open to Prince William being given knowledge of his movements. He's specifically been keeping it from Prince William. I mean, I really feel like he's the last thing on Prince William's radar with the cancer and, like we said, these addition of responsibilities. And oh, thank God Prince Harry's giving us access to whatever Shanghai conference he has to talk about climate change. I mean, I get it, and it actually makes sense to me, and it's the right move if it's true, but it's also the arrogance of this being some big olive branch to Prince William. Like, Prince William doesn't care. No matter what you do, Prince William can be on the cover of whatever newspaper if he really wants to be.
Of course he can. And, when it came to the Angola thing, fair play to Harry. By all accounts, he's supposed to have nipped on to Botswana afterwards. But, the Queen Camilla in a portrait, well, they're slightly to a penny. The whole point is, I applaud him doing that trip to Angola, but I do get, just as you do, totally frustrated with them always seemingly having a PR opportunity just at the same time. There will be, it was all over the Trooping Colour and Wimbledon. Wasn't we getting endless Instagrams of Archie and Lilibet from, and Meghan sending stuff out? Cynical manipulation. And it drives me mad that they think that that's the way to behave, because I'm not, you see, what I'm beginning to feel now is that Harry is missing the royal life because he's 40. And if he'd still been in the royal family, his life would have been mapped out for him. Mm-hmm. And the trouble is, he's now looking at his life and wondering, what does it actually hold for me? That's the big problem for him. So these things and saying, right, well, I'm going to let you know what I'm doing in my diary. Therein lies the big problem. Whereas Meghan's playing at whatever she's playing at this week, and trying, Harry is completely rudderless. And so therefore, he's probably missing his dad and saying, he wasn't such a bad bloke after all. But he doesn't know how to, but it doesn't sit with me. And well, clearly doesn't sit with you, given your description of him. And it is, it always comes from him. I would like to. I'm going to do. No, do as you're told. Wake up, smell the roses, and start behaving like a grown man. Mm-hmm. Grow some.
Right. Well, and it's been such a significant amount of time, and with his dad's illness, it's like he has navigated in the last few years as if his dad is gone. That's got to be frightening when you don't want your dad to be gone, and I'm not, that is not sympathetic towards him whatsoever. They are the consequences of his own actions. But when I try to put myself in his shoes, if you really do miss your dad, like you say, then do what you have to do to get back in his good graces, if you just want a relationship with him. Do I think Harry and Meghan should be anywhere near the working royals in a working capacity? My body rejects it. I get hives. I vomit. I violently vomit. Absolutely not. But if he really misses his dad, I hope they have a chance to communicate at some point. But the royal family just can't trust him. It would have to be such surface level conversations. How are you? How are the children? How is the weather? I mean, it would be miserable. But I think when it comes to this,
it sounds like a perfectly normal British house party.
Perfectly British conversation.
Perfectly British conversation. We're talking about the weather again. And then you sort of.
What line I wish I would have pulled from this article, and I'm sorry that I didn't. I assumed I had, was that the Sussexes usually relish hijacking those headlines, but they've recognized that is one of the things that continues to get under King Charles, specifically his skin. And it reminds me of when Meghan was new on the scene and they were just dating. And I believe that the king, I've got to Google this because I've told you this story before. Yeah. King in Pakistan or Afghanistan, he was somewhere incredibly important. And Harry tells Prince William and Jason Knopf, I want to release a statement telling the media that they're being racist about Meghan Markle. And William agrees. Jason Knopf writes it up. They release it. I remember reporting on it in Sacramento, California on the morning show. It was like such big news that Prince Harry was defending his girlfriend against the British media. It totally took away from King Charles's engagement or state visit or something incredibly important. And that was like the beginning of this domino effect. And it's interesting because the Daily Mail makes it sound like a lot of times it is intentional.
Well, No, I'm absolutely convinced they know what they're doing, but it may be that this sort of quasi meeting that these PR people had is maybe trying to drum some little sense into Harry by saying, look, the royal family is saying, let them know the things that really annoy them. And it's every time, any time the royal family try and do something, up you pop trying to upstage us. And I think that might be some of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes. And Harry is being gently told, look, if you ever want to get back together again, just for goodness sake, don't try and upstage the British royal family and what they're about. You may disagree. You're fully entitled to go and live a separate life. Now don't feel it your life work is to actually undermine them at every opportunity. And that may be some of the conversations that are going on behind the corridors, in the corridors of various palaces and between communications between PR teams. Look, let's know what you're going to do. We're not going to stop you doing what you're going to do, but don't rain on our parade, is what the royal family are saying. And I have absolute nothing but sympathy for the royal family because, but maybe it is Meghan's life work to rain on the royal family's parade.
Preach.
It's not correct. That's the
Preach.
problem.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you.
Yeah, you shut your eyes, they're going, yes, but that's the problem. She doesn't care. She doesn't care anyway about most things, as long as it's working on her behalf. And if she can be upstage them, then she presumably gets a degree of satisfaction about it. But maybe there is some realism coming into Harry's approach to it that maybe he's getting frustrated. I don't know that he's now starting to actually say, look, we've got to do this differently. And their PR teams might finally be getting through to them that, you have to stop the rot. And we have to start behaving like adults. Which have they behaved like adults for the last 5 or 6 years? No. They behave like spoilt teenagers,
Mm. That's what Samantha Cohen said. She said it was like working for teenagers. Do you know why
Yeah.
I feel like this is such an important move too? Because one of the reasons why I really felt like Prince Harry rejected the government's new strategy surrounding his security, which he lost that battle. We know that he has 28 days before he plans to visit that he needs to give the government his itinerary, and then they determine what type of security detail he gets once he's landed. And I've always felt like, aside from just wanting what his brother had or wanting what he previously had prior to quitting his job, I always felt like there was an element of control and not wanting to give up details of his trip to these government officials that he'd already decided he didn't like or didn't trust. So I do think this is a big move because I do think he hates anybody having his schedule in advance.
Well, no, I think he feels he's got a sense of entitlement that, I'll do what I want to do. But why can't I just do what I want to do? Wake up and smell. It's not straightforward now. Whether you like it or not, you were born into the royal family. That comes with its pressures. Now, you may no longer be a working royal, but you are still of that family. That presents security issues. When you come, look, he's just gone to Angola. The security arrangements for there must have been huge. He's walking through a minefield. I mean, fair play to him. But I mean, that's not, that's fairly fraught with dangers. Yet he's terrified about coming to this country with his family and children. No, I'm not saying everything's perfect in this country and can happen anywhere. Look, at the moment, we've been in sort of security meltdown. Scotland, every policeman, woman, and everything has been out on every golf course in Scotland protecting your president at the moment. So it's security is very important. And for Harry, the government is saying, if you're coming here, we just need to know what you're doing. We're not saying you can't do it, but just have the good manners to tell us. So if you're going somewhere where we think, oh, that may not be quite so clever, we'll let you know. He should come over in September because that's when Well Child have their annual get together, and hopefully, you never know what will happen during that time. Will he nip up to see his father? We don't know. But the whole thing is, it's pathetic. He's groveling and wants to say, I'm offering olive branches. It should be the other way round. The royal family should be telling him how to behave. But I don't know how you go about doing that.
Meghan Markle locked in negotiations for a new Netflix deal as her contract is set to expire. Right before we went on, we discussed kind of the contradicting narratives that we've heard over the last week. Here's where I think we stand. Here's where I understand that negotiations or the agreement is. It's that the original contract is dead. And there's that a contract like that, it would be a miracle to get a contract like that probably ever again. They were in this great spot in the middle of the plague where everyone was stuck at home watching content, and Netflix was making so much bank. And that was probably Netflix's glory days. So they got this incredible deal where Netflix wanted X amount of product from them or projects from them. In turn, they would get, it's rumored to be a $100,000 contract. So what I believe is happening now is that Netflix, according to what I've heard, wants first pick. So Meghan's not like on the roster anymore. It's not Netflix exclusive content by the Sussexes attached to Netflix. It's Netflix simply wants first dibs if Harry and Meghan, which page 6 says they do, have any more projects that they would like to pitch. And Netflix will continue to remain Meghan's quote unquote partner in as ever. So I'll tell you what the Daily Mail says. Sources close to the streaming giant said, make no mistake, a deal is being worked through as we speak. The details remain closely guarded. Here's where I disagree with this Sussex source. If you're in the top third of Netflix, you're getting another deal. Well, there are shows like Queer Eye, which were canceled this season, and they have performed, that show performs better than Meghan Markle's. They also said what happens at the end of a contract is that people renegotiate, but when doing any kind of commercial negotiations, both sides are not allowed to talk about it, kind of like duh. Netflix is listed as a company, so they can't say anything or confirm officially yet that a new deal is happening. That to me, it doesn't make any sense because they do come out and comment about Meghan Markle. Ted Sarandos recently talked to Variety about Meghan Markle. And then they said, the source added, people point to Polo was a flop, but it's worth remembering that Harry and Meghan was the biggest documentary on Netflix ever in 2022. That alone could have afforded them 50 flops, and it still would have been worth it for Netflix. That was 3 years ago. You're only as good as your last success, Rupert. Like, that makes no sense to me, the way that this Sussex source is trying to justify a show that was in the low 300s of Netflix's top watched content. And that's not counting Prince Harry's, which was beyond, low in the 3000s.
The problem is their one selling point, and the reason they got the deal, was to do the royal tittle-tattle story in that documentary series about the break, right? That was the whole point of why they got dangled that vast sum of money. So, as you quite rightly say, you're only as good as your last documentary. Now, that might have brought them some leverage, but actually, when you think what's going forward, we've got a second-rate cooking program. Now, it said it got 5.3 million views. Is that good in Netflix terms when you think they're going to a global audience and the scale and size of Netflix for something that was quite well publicized? I think they would have been hoping for better. The Polo, they would have been hoping for better, but it was absolutely awful. Had nothing to commend it. And so if they're going to be on a deal that they've got to come up with ideas, I'm not sure I trust the quality of their ideas. So Netflix may say, right, we've got first dibs. But if you think that at one stage, wasn't Harry going, well, I'll go and interview President Putin for his podcast, or wasn't there something like that? Let's go and talk to
the Pope. He wanted to interview the president of Ukraine and Donald Trump, who he insults every other Tuesday. It's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, look, have they got some film projects they might want to be putting forward? I don't know. Look, it's a saturated market of films and everything with all these streaming companies trying to offer something that's a bit different. So yes, they're desperate for content, but Netflix will be, maybe they're saying, right, we've got an option on it. So for that, we give you a certain amount of money to guarantee that you give us first dibs on your idea. But they've actually got to produce some ideas that actually might work. In this second series of the cooking show, what's going to be so different, considering it was recorded before the first one went out and they didn't actually know what the first one, how the first one was going to be received. So they couldn't make any changes
Yeah,
unless they've done a.
which we should stress was poorly. It was received across the board
Oh,
poorly. There was little to
yeah.
no enthusiasm about it. There was a morbid curiosity associated with season one that I think will lack in season two.
Isn't she supposed to be friends with the big boss of Netflix? So,
Yeah.
who she's presumably schmoozing the hell out of
Yes.
to try and guarantee some form of deal. Yes, they're linked to trying to merch these products, which don't seem to be going particularly well. The rosé's been panned. I don't know whether things are sold out or you can buy things still online. You can get this. Can you get the slop? Can you get the spread?
No, it's sold out.
What was the point? I
Yeah,
mean, you want to buy stuff, it can't just sell out the whole time
I
or
know.
sell out within a week. Is that clever? And that's why I'm sure that these marketing people came out with what they were saying the other day, such a poorly devised business plan and strategy. It's amateur half hour from the get-go.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with it. So Netflix, they're probably just trying to protect to some degree their 100 million and saving face. They've got to look at it from a business point of view because they'll get, sever their contract. Well, everyone's going to say if they don't, well, that was a complete waste of time. How do you justify that amount of money? You have to ask them that question. Was it worth it? I don't know what the answer to that is. Presumably, they say it is commercially viable. Is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
Doesn't feel it to me, but you're in Tinseltown, Kinsey. You might know more about it than I do. Stuck in my little Cotswold idyll.
I think that Ted Sarandos likes the attention Meghan Markle brings, but is Meghan's lifestyle brand sustainable? I don't think so. Like, especially in an Ozempic fueled society, are we racing to buy loose fruit spread and her carbs and cookies? It's a weird time to try to I mean, maybe booze, but I heard that it tastes like pure gasoline, the rosé. So I think it's all
Well,
very, what you mentioned the podcast that ripped into her last week, and I apologize for not remembering the name of it, but one point that they did make that I thought was really important, and Maureen Callahan has said this to me too, is Meghan should have leaned into the brand that she had, which was the rebellious brand. Like, what is rebellious, which she had? I mean, the running away from the British royal family, I can be better, I can do more, I don't need you. What is so rebellious about sitting in a kitchen making a fruit rainbow? She's trying to position herself as something that she's completely not to the public. She's trying to rebrand herself through this stuff. And where the win was, where it already existed, was this idea of her being a disruptor. And she's totally thrown that out the window.
no.
The same little girl that was writing the soap company saying women, it's sexist to say women all over the world are in their kitchens. Now this girl is stuck in her kitchen. And it's like nothing she does makes sense.
Well, no, that it never does. She's supposed to be, being chained to the kitchen. But yes, look, I shouldn't be bringing my wife into these as a thing. Case in point, but she worked hard. She's now retired, but she ran a successful company. But she's a domestic goddess. I know my sister-in-law watches this, so I'm telling her now. So when she gets to the end of the program, she will tell me later. Hello, Brenda. Anyway, but anyway, my wife at the moment, I think she's pickling our cucumbers that we're growing. But so what we're actually talking about is yes, you can do these things, but in Meghan's case, it just feels like, well, I'm playing. Aren't I the perfect mum? Aren't I the perfect parent? And yes, she can afford to be the perfect parent and the perfect mum because she's got rows of people out there doing her gardening and setting up her kitchen. Don't tell me she's turning on the laundry.
Yeah,
Not a chance.
right.
Not a chance. Well, okay.
And also, like,
I
she doesn't need a pat on the back for being the perfect mom. And that's kind of the tone
no,
we get through her series too, is like, look, I'm the perfect mom, acknowledge it.
yeah,
When it's like, yeah, you can be the perfect mom because you have nannies and you have
yeah,
people, you have house people that clean up after you and that, scrub your 16 toilets. Yeah, it's
yeah.
easy to be the perfect whatever when you have an army of people that are keeping you afloat.
Well, and that's what's so disingenuous. And that's what people are not buying into this as ever lifestyle. I don't think. Now, of course, some people would like the product, but they're buying into something that is pure fantasy and is not true because that cooking program, as the podcast and everyone said, was done in another house, had a production crew as long as your arm, getting everything ready. All she did turned up, the fruit was ready, and she had to cut it. And then there was a brand new Le Creuset bowl for her to cook in. Everything provided for presumably free to just cook on, brand spanking new. Um, no, it's fake. So her mother trying to be the perfect mum, it's not how 99% of the population across the world live. Working mums are under the cosh, irritated by their husbands who haven't done enough, and then at the same time got children running around there screaming at them. Well, I don't know. I may be being very old-fashioned here, but I absolutely can't buy into the Meghan view of the world.
Honestly, I think that's a fair statement when you look at where she landed. What was it, 800 or was it 383 on Netflix lists of programs? The way you just spoke and in your defense, a lot of people feel that exact way. Otherwise, I think her show would have done better. And the reason I say that is because of the amount of press we gave her,
Yeah,
the amount of press Netflix pushed, the organic traffic that comes when you are related to the British royal family,
yeah.
and the amount of traffic that comes or the PR that comes with everybody watching to see what your next move is. And we all were waiting for American Riviera Orchard and to see how that manifested. And inevitably, it manifests into With Love, Meghan, with a side of As Ever. That was what American Riviera Orchard became, these two entities. Um, and yeah, so it's like what the first source said that talked to Rob Shutter. She had the name, she had the resources, she had everything. And at the end of the day, according to that source, the return on investment just isn't there for Netflix. And I tend to believe that if they maintain a relationship with Meghan Markle, I imagine that it's because they want first dibs if anything ever goes south with Prince Harry. They just want to keep that relationship
Uh,
going, that line of
I,
communication.
I think that's probably they're just making sure they've got first option on the thing that made the money in the first place, justified the 100 million. If the marriage goes south, and no one's wishing that, but
No.
if it does, Meghan will be up there. She'll be on the call. Right, here's my side of the story. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
And she would have got everything in place. She got every bits of conversation, and she will want to do if it comes to that because she's a clever lady when it comes to that. But ultimately, we don't want that to happen for the sake of the children, as we were alluding to about how tough it was on William and Harry when their parents broke up. We don't want that to happen to Archie and Lilibet. We want Harry. He wants to try and give those children the childhood that he feels he didn't have. So we don't want that to happen, but we know marriages do break down, sadly.
Right. And I think the benefit Prince William has is that Catherine's family have been such a heavy influence on their lives and their family. Catherine's family really stepped up and in when Catherine got sick, and they've helped both of them navigate, how difficult relationships and marriages can be. Prince William has had the best possible scenario when it comes to in-laws.
Yeah.
He loves Pippa,
Oh,
he loves James, he loves Catherine's parents. And I mean, I just think that it's such a blessing for him and for Catherine that they have that stability.
well, I think that the normalcy of their parents is what he, within the sort of confines of the sort of British of the background that he comes from, was what he craved and has been able to enjoy. And the Middletons are pretty hand-ons, I'm sure, as grandparents. And love. They've now got Pippa's got children. James,
James
I
has
don't know.
kids. Yeah, James has a
You
baby.
know, well, babies and dogs and everything, and so it's a big extended family now for the Middletons to keep on top of. So, but I think it is important, and that's in a way that Harry's now not got that.
Mm-mm.
He hasn't got that extended family. Keep in touch with your family because it's so important. They are the glue that keep people together, and at the moment the Sussexes are just on their own. With nothing to reach out to. So that's why maybe, as we were talking here, that way of Harry trying to find a way of navigating through the next years as that I don't mess up and try and maybe it's the slow drip of trying to restore normalcy within them that I actually now won't try and mess up the PR of the royal family, proving I am moving on now and seeing I've done my bit. Yes, I've moved on, and maybe he's trying to enter a more mature phase, but it's a wait and see job. I
There's a
wonder how
nice
what we're
little,
talking about in a year time, Kinsey.
I love the way you put a nice little bow on that conversation. You brought it back full circle. Agree with us, disagree with us, let us know in the comments below. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video with a friend. Thanks so much for watching, Rupert. Excellent work as always.
Yeah.